Production agriculture over-applies fertility. This is bad for environmental reasons, for economic reasons. We have the technology to address this. It's time we do so, because then there's going to be regulatory reasons for doing so. That's what we're covering in this episode of The Business of Agriculture. Are you looking for productive efficiencies in growing higher yielding, better performing crops? NewFields Ag provides a complete portfolio of biological products focused on you, the farmer. Visit newfieldsag.com for more information to help you farm better. Hey there, welcome to another fantastic episode of The Business of Agriculture. Got a great one for you today because we're talking about something that you've seen me do shorts. I was walking along my drainage ditch this summer and I talked about nitrates in the water supply. We've got this issue coming up in big fashion in Iowa, one of the most agricultural states in the union. There are nitrates in the Raccoon River that flows through Des Moines. 70 plus 80% of it is attributed to agriculture over application of nitrates. We've got this issue in Wisconsin, a very agricultural state, because of the dairies. We've got this issue in Nebraska, where I spoke last February about the issue of too many fertility products that end up in the water supply, in the aquifer, in your wells. We came about, shall I say, 30 years ago in North Ohio with phosphates in Lake Erie. This is a real issue, and agriculture is in the bullseye. Here's the deal. You don't need to be scared about regulation, but trust me, regulation is coming. You got to realize that this is an environmental as well as an economic issue, which will become a regulatory issue. The good news is we have technology increasingly where we can understand this and correct our errors. I've got Pat Larson on here. He is with NewFields Ag. They're a sponsor of this show, as you well know, and he's joined by Nick Musser of Fertilizer. These two gentlemen were both at a field day that was hosted right here, De La Rosa Farms, beginning of August 2025. The field day was for a different company called Tyler Grow, but these guys came here and saw all the cool plots and all the work that we did here. One of the things that Pat did, he says, hey, would you like me to pull some tissue samples? And I said, yeah, but you know, when we think about tissue sampling of the crop, you would pull samples, field samples, leaves, and you'd put them in the mail and send them off to a lab, and they would degrade a little bit. And then 6 days later, you'd get a result. 9 days later, and they'd say, here's what's going on in your tissue. Can't do a lot of work with that 9 days later. Now we have the technology to test samples immediately. Within 15 minutes, he knew exactly what's going on in that plant, particularly as it relates to nutrients. And it turns out, in my plot, and even in my field, where it was just a test sample, we had 50% more nitrogen than we needed. What does that tell you? That we are putting out way too much fertility. It ends up in places it doesn't need to be. And again, the bullseye is on agriculture. Thanks for being here, Nick and Pat.
Thank you.
So I think I set the subject up pretty well here, because I think that most people that are forward-looking in agriculture see this and understand it. And they don't like the idea that there's a potential regulatory threat coming, but I don't see any way that it's not. When Iowa, Nick, you can talk about this. I'm just going to ask you point blank. When in Iowa, the country's second most agricultural state by dollar revenue, is talking about regulating ag because of nitrates flowing through the Fox River or the Raccoon River, it tells me we better start paying attention to this sooner versus later.
Of course, the government's going to get involved if the farmers don't get in front. We teach our guys how to load that profile. Your soil will tell you how much you can do and how much you can hold. And the easy button is probably a lot of the culprit. Everything going out pre, and not enough places for it to attach. So Mother Nature takes it into the water, and then it gets off the farm.
Pat, you did the samples at my field day. It was really kind of cool, and then you presented it during the luncheon following at the conclusion of the field day. We didn't know this as well. I think we knew it 10, 20 years ago. I think we knew we were flinging it out there, but it was an easy thing to do. Fertility was kind of inexpensive. If your crops look crappy, the neighbors judge you. It's almost like the beginning of insurance. Before crop insurance, there's the insurance of just over-applying nutrients. Am I right?
Oh, yeah. It's well, I mean, you still look, nitrogen, NP and K is still, cheap. It's cheap and it's easy. People are probably going to say, well, he's nuts. It's $300 a ton for 28. But when you get down to a per acre use rate, it it goes down.
Or per bushel, on a per bushel use rate. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, we're paying more for fertility now, granted, on a trend line than we did 20, 30 years ago. We're also getting 40% more bushels per acre than we did 20, 30 years ago. So on a comparative basis, it still gets overused because even though it's expensive, it's not expensive on a per unit basis.
Correct. Yes, when you start figuring it down that way, it's still not expensive. It's one of the cheaper things that we do in farming, and it's easy to do. I mean, you got to put it on. So hey, let's just throw a little extra out there and get our crops looking green and pretty, and have everything we need for success if we don't have rains or some sort of disaster. But if we start thinking of it a different way of helping our environment, for one, so we don't get regulated, and cost effective for the farmer, there's different ways of getting our NP and Ks out of the soil than just over applying the fertilizers.
Yeah. So again, you understand why producers have done it, because of those reasons. It wasn't that prohibitively, but also then there's the pride part of it. It wasn't prohibitive from an economic standpoint. Also, it requires change, but also then there's the technical part of it. Nick, Pat went out there with this thing that looks like a children's like Viewmaster or something. It looks almost like an old-fashioned video camera. And what the deal is, you pull a leaf off, you stick it in between these two, sort of almost like a waffle iron, put it down, and it tells you, spits out it sends it, and then next thing you know, 15 minutes later on your phone, you have the information. That's how it works, right?
Right. It's ultra red frequency that goes through the leaf. You don't have to pull the leaf off the plant. You can do it while it is on the plant. You just hold it up there. It takes over 200,000 pictures through that leaf, sends that to an algorithm back at the home computer, and then within 15 minutes, luckily with you guys, it was 15 minutes. Usually we say 2 hours to 24 hours, but it came back rather quickly on your data, and it did show, between the check and your product, it only showed a difference of 0.4 microns per millimeter. So there's no difference. There's no difference between where you applied your product and the over application of nitrogen.
Yeah, so let's use nitrogen as the example. So to explain it to the backstory for the person that's listening or watching this, in the samples, in our trial that we did, we used this company, Title Grow's products, in various different aspects, and then the final build had everything on it, every one of their products, plus a product which helps you reduce nitrogen and application. And the issue there was, even in that one, where we reduced nitrogen application, there was way too much nitrogen in the plant. Not way too much, more than is necessary to produce optimum yield. And then over in the check plot, same story. So let's address that. Nick, there's a person that's going to say, well, wait a minute, how does that little thing that Pat carried around that shoots it off and then sends back the information and I get this data on my cell phone, how does it know how much nitrogen should be in the plant? How does it?
Well, I assume it's just like the nitrogen trials that, I can't remember what university does this, but they go zero clear up to like 300 pounds, and then they'll do it by soil type in your region, and you put in your nitrogen cost, and the whole data brings you back, tells you where you need to quit applying it to be economically viable.
Those are university recommendations, though. Those university recommendations have always told you to overapply because, university. Let a little cat out of the bag here. Sometimes universities get money from big agricultural companies, and sometimes the research could possibly be bastardized. Oh, Damon, you just said that. Not my alma mater, Purdue or Iowa State or Kansas State. Yeah, don't be naive and don't be stupid. Of course, university recommendations are always heavy on what might favor those companies that give them money.
Yeah. The
Pat,
cool part about this one,
hey, wait, Nick.
cool one part about this one, Damian, is that they put 0 pounds out there, clear up to 250.
Yep.
So if you paid research by an action guy, they don't want you to see that. They don't want you to see low rates, can still make yield. And when you have a customer trying to be economically sound, put on enough to maximize returns, it's a great tool. And it only gets better every year because the data is coming out of these plots and it's coming out of your backyard. So that's a great tool that a lot of guys don't know about because it's not probably being paid to be researched, but it is valuable.
Okay, so about the thing, Pat, you went around and put the waffle press on these leaves, and you came back and said, "Hey, there's 40% or 50% more nitrogen in this leaf than is sufficient." That's the point that I'm asking, because the person listening to this might say, "How the hell does this know what that plant needs?" The testing comes up with baseline what a plant's sufficient amount in the plant is to give you the 0.6 pounds or whatever it is of kernels on a plant. Talk to me about that, the sufficient aspect of it.
So the way it works, it's just like if you take a tissue sample, you pull the leaf off at the ear leaf and you roll it up and you send it in and they mush it up and they draw all the data out of it. It goes by parts per million, and that's been broke down over several years, knowing how many parts per million you need to produce a 250 bushel crop, a 300 bushel crop in that leaf. So it's doing the exact same thing. It's pulling out by parts per million. So when you start reading the chart, luckily ours is nice enough to give you a red, a green, and a dark green to tell you that you're where you're at in your step. You're shooting for that green. When you start seeing products going into the dark green and very high into the dark green, farmers are real happy. Hey, I got nitrogen when I need it. Well, you've got too much nitrogen when you need it, and that's the problem. We could probably go back out to your plot today and check it again, and it'll still show abundancy of nitrogen in that plant. And yeah, it's going to be in your fodder somewhat. Some people are going to say, well, you're just going to not plow it under, but it's going to degrade back into the soil. Well, no, it's going to release into your atmosphere. And yes, it's going to go into the soil, and then it's going to release from your soil because it's a nitrate, not a nitrite. Or Nick can probably tell you which one's which. But
well, Nick, I want you to address that. But that's the thing. So first off, the person is going to say, well, wait a minute, Damian, I kind of get what you're saying. We're over applying this stuff. But you know what? What's the big deal? It might stay in that plant. I harvest off the kernels. The rest of the plant stays in the field as fodder. It releases, and then it stays in my soil. Well, no, if that were the case, we wouldn't have regulation now coming in Wisconsin and Iowa and Nebraska about this very issue of over-application of synthetic nitrogen ending up in the aquifer and therefore being or the rivers and being a risk and a and a lightning rod, I should also say. It's a risk. It's an environmental problem. It's also a complete environmental lightning rod that brings this thing right back to agriculture like, hey, are you poisoning us?
Well, a lot of it goes back to my original comment, Damon. You got a loading capacity of every soil type, every soil profile. So you look at CECs, for every 1%, you're going to hold 10 pounds of N. So you can hold, in a lot of soils around here, 80 to 90 pounds. A lot of it's overloading. So if you put on 200 pounds of anhydrous ammonia and 12 pounds of N on 80, you can only hold 80. So on 120, as soon as it moves, it turns to nitrate, soil moves it over, it's going to move. And same thing in your residue. Your residue is going to break down and that nitrogen will be used. Biology wins every time. So if you got the right condition, you're right, do see it go to the groundwater.
Got it.
And off the field.
I want to get into then, the detection, and then I want to get into the obvious objections, and then I want to talk about both the economic and we were talking about the environmental, I want to talk about the economic aspect of it. Before I do that, I want to tell you about my friends at Harvest Returns. Harvest Returns is a company that wants you to help in your agribusiness expansion. They realize that some companies, some new ideas don't fit the bank template. Sure, we love farm credit and we love the agricultural lenders, but maybe they have a template for how you can get money from them to expand your business. and you don't fit their template. You know, it's a round peg, square hole kind of a thing. Oh, wait, round hole, square peg. Anyway, I always get that wrong. The point is, what Harvest Returns did is they got a pool of 18,000 investors that put money into this concept that what you can do is create your own financing option. So maybe you're a company that needs to expand, and you know what? They can help you. They will fund you. That's what they do. Harvest Returns can bring the capital you need to reach your goals. If you want to learn more about this, go to harvestreturns.com to learn more about taking your business to the next level. That's harvestreturns.com. All right. So there's the environmental angle on this. The producer, since a lot of people that listen to this are obviously in the business of agriculture, will say, yeah, but you know what? By the time you test that sample, Pat, if I'm deficient and I don't have enough in there, I can't make it up. I already lost yield. I'd rather be over. Answer that.
Yeah, that's somewhat true, but there are still ways of being able to apply something that's deficient to the plant, be it through a drone application, be it, I mean, the reason we are backing this system that we're using is that you can immediately apply what you need to apply when you need to apply it. Being deficient, I mean, we got this thing called Mother Nature, so we really don't know what's going to happen with efficiency and deficiency, but we do know that we have other ways of pulling nitrogen in from atmospheric type biological systems to even mining it from the soil with different biologicals nowadays, to where you don't have to be applying, 200-300 pounds of nitrogen to your crop to get a 300 bushel, 250-300 bushel crop. We need to start thinking smarter and figuring out different ways of taking what we've already got and using it.
Your sampling, and by the way, this is a reflection on me. And you're saying, well, Damian, this is your field. I mean, my God, I'm not doing that. I'm sure that there's the person, because we know that agricultural people are very prideful. Oh, I don't have this problem. I think the answer would be, Nick, it's most fields you drive by are guilty of this. Am I right?
You're correct. And you touched on at the start, over application in NP and K. They build giant fertilizer barns every day with big bins that support those three, but nobody talks about the other pieces of the puzzle to make max yield. Tissue, like what they're doing, will show you that if you're low on boron, you need to hit boron now. But if you got the right product, you need to know how hard, because with tissue testing in the past, it turns into a Band-Aid. If that plant is borderline deficient, how much should you use of a good product?
Right.
And timely information is key. I've seen 8-10 bushel bumps in bean fields, all because of the right rate of boron post. That's hidden. You won't see it visual.
They never talked about boron back in the old days of crop production. Nitrogen, phosphorus, potassium, like you said, and it comes in by the trainload and goes into these fertilizer facilities that are as big as as harbors. Okay, the economic aspect of it, Pat. You found that we were like 40 or 50% off, and this is not an uncommon finding. The money part of this, at some point, we're talking about right now, and every agriculture person's screaming and singing the blues, but cutting back on this stuff is like number 9. Go and beat up your supplier, not buy a new piece of equipment, try and haggle with the bank, go borrow more money. All these answers that we do in agriculture to address a financial concern, and I think like number 17 is, gosh, we've been flinging out fertilizer unnecessarily. The environment's almost like over there. It's like, oh yeah, I guess it gets in the drainage ditch. But from an economic standpoint, I can make the economic argument all day long. Cut back right now, 30%, and it's not going to cost you a nickel.
Yeah, true. I mean, there's products out there now that you can put on your dry fertilizer, a lot of humidix and stuff like that will make that fertilizer more readily available to the crop. And when you can make something more readily available and not lock up in the soils, that just means you can start cutting back on the poundage because you're getting what you need. Biologicals, I know some people say, well, it's a snake oil or whatever, but in the last several years, they've made leaps and bounds in what they know about biologicals and what they can do in the crop. I mean, if you get a simple basilicus in the soil, that could actually help you unlock locked up phosphates in your soil that's been there for years, but it's been in a solid form and not being able to be used by the plant. You can use a nitrogen fixator where it either puts spores on the plant and brings in atmospheric nitrogen and poops it into the plant, for a better term. There's several different ways that you can start investigating. The thing you got to really investigate is shelf life and the ease of applying, and do I have to do something else? Because if we don't do it that way, if companies don't do it that way, the farmer's not going to do it because it's different from what they've been doing in the past.
So guys like you, Nick, you've been in ag retail for more than 20 years. Okay, first off, we all agreed that there's over application. There's completely no excuse for it right now. Still happening. Why? Mindset.
Past behavior got the best results. I always hear it. Well, where we put on more nitrogen, we see more yield. Nitrogen gets all the credit, none of the blame. I never see a guy that says, man, the nitrogen hurt my yield. I think that's something that's coming. Guys are going to start making that connection that every time we put salt out there, there's a penalty. We start with great yielding crops, and everything we do to them makes them less. So we got to figure out ways to do less damage. And I think the soil, the water, everything wins.
And by the way, Nick's part of the Miami County Soil and Water Conservation District Board, and he's not just an ag retailer out here trying to sell truckloads of fertility. He actually has got a pretty big mindset about where this all goes. So from an environmental standpoint, we just talked about the economics. How much are we talking about saving from an economics? I think that we could go through a lot of agricultural entities and peel $100 of spend back. I'm sorry, net $100 of spend. Yeah, we might do some things like Pat talked about, Nick, address this. Maybe put in some biologicals, utilizing some newer stuff, changing up some of our technological approach, and we could net $100 savings per acre. Am I wrong?
You're not wrong. But once my guys go down this path, we tend to spread every acre. But we hit the things we don't do. Sulfur, micros, humic acids, healthier soils. That's what we're striving for. Not pouring salt on, finding products with less salt, changing the game, because that's what you have to do in marginal soils where we live. We're not blessed with 22 CECs and 5 organic.
By the way, did you ever notice this, Pat? Bring on an agronomic type, and they go straight to a bunch of mumbo jumbo bullshit that the average person. I have people that listen to this that work in the cranberry processing business. None of those words mean anything. Okay, why are they dumping salt on them? Pat, would you do me a favor? Would you un-agronomist, un-PhD this for the cranberry processor? Listen to my show. First off, they're saying, "What do you mean they're dumping salt on there?" What he means is, within a lot of fertility products, Pat,
there's a lot of salts.
Those salts accumulate after the fertility gets through the plant and goes through a cycle, or saturates, leaches into your water table. What are you left with?
You're left with a mess in your water table, but
left with a bunch of salt in your soil too.
Yeah, right. But there's a difference between the salts that he's talking about and applying sulfur. So for years, Indiana was blessed with being high in sulfur because we had these great big factories up on Lake Michigan that caused these plumes, and the plumes dump sulfur across our farm ground.
Incidentally, another history lesson, that was called acid rain. In the 1980s, we were told we were all going to die because of acid rain, and us in agriculture said, "What the hell are you talking about? We're getting free sulfur that comes out of the sky because of the steel mills in Gary. We like it."
Yep, yeah, that's true. They did like it. We got it for free, but we're showing deficiencies in sulfur, and that's one of the main. If you want to get a big, especially in soybeans, people won't believe this, but if you want to get a big boom in your soybeans, put sulfur in there. put a little sulfur in your, and I'm not talking a lot, but put a little sulfur, which is a micro. It's going to increase your yields, be it in a row starter or whatever you want to. But the salts he's talking about are basically the nitrogen fertilizer salts that it takes to make that synthetic nitrogen and fertilizer. Am I correct, Nick?
You're correct, Pat. And yeah, Damian, first thing a guy will say, well, I use manure. There's no salt there. Yeah, there is. There's salt manure too.
Yeah.
Salts is what we have to deal with to fertilize.
Yeah.
That's why when we can go with lower rates with less salt, we can respond with higher yields.
Yeah, we reduce our salt. Then, by the way, the other one you mentioned, just since we are going to teach the listener here, you said CECs, cation exchange capacity. That's a number in the soil. So go ahead and just tell the listener why that matters.
So why that matters is that's your electrical charge of that soil. So sand, silt, clay, they all have a different charge. For every 1%, you can hold about 10 pounds of N. It's a pretty good barometer saying, am I really doing right by my soil? The next one I talk about is organic matter and OM. That's the residue breaking down. So when you're doing things to improve residue and your organic matter doesn't go up, that's telling you your soil is unhealthy. It's probably got a lot to do with the amount of salt you're putting on it. Our plants hate salt, and the biology in the soil hates it even more.
We'll talk to you real quick. We're going to cover the economics some more on this, and then also the pending regulation, because the person that's poo-pooing this topic, saying, oh, yeah, you know what, these guys are off here. I'm not the doom and gloom guy. I'm the marketplace observer guy. I'm the person that's giving you a dose of reality. You ignore this to your own. When you are put out of business because you refuse to do this, don't come crying to me, because I'm telling you, regulation is coming fast. All right. I want to talk to you about redox. This is also a great opportunity for me to talk about how biostimulants can help you. Maybe you are overusing synthetic fertility. In fact, you probably are if you work in agriculture in the United States of America. And you know what? There are options out there. Redox, my friends at Redox, provide carefully sourced nutrients combined with biostimulants that have been proven winners since the Moon family started this company 31 years ago. Redox has a product called DiCap, which provides unequaled stress defense, increasing your plant's respiration and antioxidant production. It's also a fantastic source of potassium and phosphorus. If you want to learn more about this, DiCap, or any other of the Redox lineup, go to redoxgrows.com. That's redoxgrows.com. Okay. We didn't even talk about, we talked about that tissue sampling that Pat did. We found out that there was 40% more than would be sufficient to grow a certain level of crop in that field. And we were just talking about nitrogen, but you could do this on anything, phosphorus and potassium probably, and even some of the micros, but generally micronutrients don't get overapplied. We need to talk about the fact that there's a whole bunch of it in the soil that doesn't even get in the plant, Nick. It doesn't even get into the plant to be. So wait, if you've got 40% more in the plant than you need, how much is laying there in the middle of the row that never even got in the plant? I think the economics of this are very simple. Start cutting back immediately and do like Nick talks about. Factor in some more micronutrients, etc. And all of a sudden, that $100 you're losing per acre might go back to break even just because of a fertility savings. Yes?
Definitely in today's market, Damian. The prices aren't going down. Pat's number on 28 was actually a little low. It's closer to probably 450.
Okay. Let's talk about then the environmental. I'm sorry, the economic part of it. I fault agriculture for always looking at efficiency gains instead of new demand and new ways to upsell. This is one of the most dominant efficiency gains that has happened. And I'm going to start using a better setting on my computer because I'm blowing a bushel out the back. Okay, that's $4. Here I'm talking about $100 per acre. Pat, I don't know why this. I know why it's not being embraced, and it's because it's a little bit new and it's a little bit different, and also I don't want to look like I don't put enough fertility out there. I think that's the reason.
I agree, and it's been that through generation to generation to generation. I mean, when I farmed with my dad, the hardest thing to get him to do was to put a moldboard plow back in the fence row and leave it alone and go to ripping. We never went to complete
No till.
No till. We went to a ripper and we still cultivated our bean stubble at the end of the year. But it's going to be the same way in every generation. And even if we start adapting this, if the younger farmers start adapting different ways of doing it, once their kids and grandkids are there, they're going to say, "How does Grandpa? There's a better way of doing this," and the grandpa's going to say, "Well, this is the way we've done it." And that's still kind of the mindset of, I think, 75% of the farmers out there now.
Nick, we just talked about the background. You're involved in the Soil and Water Conservation District in your home county, and I talk about regulation. I'm sure there are people who think I'm being is hyperbolic. Oh, Damian's just throwing out a bunch of, he's getting people all wound up. Regulatory. I look at Europe, where farms literally are being forced to liquidate, say, their livestock because of the nitrates in the Netherlands. I look at a lawmaker in the state assembly in Iowa who is an attorney. I'm sorry, he's a doctor. And he's got videos on social media talking about nitrates in this Des Moines water supply in the Raccoon River, and it's because of agriculture. I don't know how a person doesn't see this and think, yeah, this is coming. This is coming. I think there's going to be nutrient management plans that you have to adhere to. And it's going to be through, if you want to get crop insurance, if you want to get a loan from your bank, I don't see any way around this. Am I right? And it's coming fast.
Well, I think you can say it's already here. Confined feeding operations are already doing these things. They're the carrot. The rest of us.
Yeah, if I want to put in a great big hog facility, I have to have a management plan for all of the manure, the effluent, the water that runs off of the facility, everything to make sure that my problems don't end up downstream. So cropping has avoided this. Livestock operations have not. You think it's coming for cropping quickly?
Yeah, I think really that's the template. If you look what the federal government has done, they're using that to set a standard. And then once they find the standard that they feel comfortable with, then they'll use crop insurance and other entities that they're participating in to force the stick part. And the carrot's already there. They're already trying to incentivize.
Pat?
Yeah, it's coming. I mean, it started over in Ohio. I don't know how many different years ago. You even look here at the lakes in Kosciuszko County. The algae blooms in the last several years have gone way through the roof, and it's coming. When it's visible. It's not like the old atrazine in drinking water thing that wasn't visible, and when
it was there,
it was there. It was there, but this is visible and from miles away, and it's going to be. I mean, you keep watching the reef die at New Orleans and the dead part of the ocean and the live part of the ocean. It's going to come.
It's coming, and frankly, I'm surprised it hasn't come with more swiftness. And then I'm going to remember, I'm a pro-agriculture guy, but what did you expect? I'm going to point this out here. I've heard the argument, they're going to take this fertilizer away from us, and we're not going to be able to make crops. We're all going to starve. We are burning 40% of our corn crop in our gas tank because we have so much of it. We don't know what to do with it. We're not going to starve if fertility is taken away from you. I'm going to give you another example. They took tetracycline out of the drip lines and poultry operations 40 years ago because we had overused tetracycline as an antibiotic so much because it made chickens, made them healthy. It also made it so we had antibiotic-resistant bugs, lots of them. Heard the same thing. You take the tetracycline away from us, we won't be able to make chickens. We have no problem making chickens. We can take an egg and turn it into a broiler butchered on your plate in about 45 days. It's not, I am always amazed at the alarmist, we'll all starve. It's not a valid argument anymore.
No, it's.
Go ahead, Pat.
No, it's not. I mean, there's guys, our science and everything in agriculture has come leaps and bounds just in the last 5 years. I mean, you look at the machine that I was using out there at your place. It's been out for 3 years. Yeah. It's 98% efficient comparing it to any type of tissue sampling you use anyplace else. But it's there. We just got to educate and listen and learn from the people that are out there that know that can lead us in the right direction.
Nick.
I think a lot of that alarmist stuff is the easy button guys.
Yeah.
Because getting bigger was always the answer. Now getting bigger's not. Now what do? Well, you take away the easy button, the bigger it gets even harder.
Yeah.
But coming from a farm family and having a dad that embraced in me that farmers are grinders. We'll figure it out. Just give us a chance.
Yeah, and I think we're going to be fine. The other part of it is, I mean, like I said, I used the example of the tetracycline. I heard it also on antibiotics on hogs. We were overusing antibiotics in hog production, and I spoke to a bunch of hog entities. The forward-thinking integrators said this won't be a big deal. We're changing our protocols. We're going to cut back on preventive antibiotics and only use them as needed. And we're using about 1/3 the amount of antibiotics 15 years later that we did then. And we still have plenty of pigs. So it's not, this is all coming. And again, I can't emphasize it enough. We have the technology to make this happen. So, I mean, we got an environmental, we got an economic argument to be made, we got a regulatory environment to be made. And if our argument is we're all going to starve, it's not adequate, nor is it accurate. So I don't see a problem with this. Last thing I want to cover, though, with all of you is your recommendation to somebody that really is forward thinking about this, Nick. They need to cut back. They're spending this money unnecessarily. Give me the 1, 2, and 3 first 3 steps they do to do this. They start with tissue sampling like Pat did.
Correct. New technologies, those are huge. When you take tissue sampling, turn it around that time frame, you can not only hit the right button on what you need, but you can evaluate how hard to hit that button. When you can put $12 of boron out and get another $100 of bean revenue, that excites a guy. That's not a big change. The other part is just getting back to your basics. Starts with a soil test. Guy that can read it. That's where the key's at.
Pat, you work for a new company that is obviously pushing new ideas, new products, et cetera, et cetera. I see this absolutely being a big key to the future. The product lineup that changes your game. Let's face it. In healthcare, 300 years ago, we used leeches. I don't know. Go to the doctor now and see how many leeches they stick on you. It's time to realize that our old tools might maybe start to get antiquated.
Our old tools aren't sharp, and they need to go get them a new DeWalt in Milwaukee. Mm-hmm. They are antiquated. Some of them, I mean, you still can't. I'm probably going to come back and oxymoron myself. You do have to start with a good NP and K base.
Yeah, right.
But you don't have to over apply. There's other ways out there of releasing what you're putting into the soil and getting into the plant when you need it. Biostimulants, biologicals, foliar feeds, micronutrients that can be applied at the given time that the plant needs it. So that's the other thing. Your nitrogen uptake in a corn plant is, I think, from the maximum is from V9 to into reproductive is when you need the most nitrogen in there. If we can timely put a smaller dose or be using something else at that time to get us through the yield, then there's.
Well, that's the other part, is the timing part, Nick, is that, and I put that chart up at the event that you were at where I spoke, and it's neat. It's neat because the point is putting enough nutrition for the next year in front of a baby isn't doing anything. The baby needs fed every day, and I think that's where we got to get smarter. Oh, it's easier to just go out and put all this out in the fall for next year. It ain't gonna be there. That's where a lot of this over application has come from. They want to make it easy on the operator. Well, it's like trying to feed a baby on January 1st and expecting that the baby's nutrition needs are going to be all met for the rest of the year.
That's correct, Damon. We've looked at this for 15 plus years here with humic acid products that can take our salty man-made fertilizer, make it look like manure. And if you talk to anybody with hogs or livestock, they'll tell you the manure fields are their best fields. Mm-hmm. But they got a balanced fertility, and it's black in color for a reason, because it's got some humic nature to it, mm-hmm. and it's breaking down with biology. That's where we need to go, and that's how we're going to get there.
Best example, I said this is an environmental issue. It's a regulatory issue that's going to be coming. If you don't think it's coming, mark my words, it will be. And then all of a sudden you're going to be screaming the blues. Oh, they're making us do these fertility plans. We'll get on it now, would be my recommendation. I also talk about the economics. I just spoke last week in Wisconsin to a group of ag retailers and had a guy come up to me afterward. And this was a great example. Pat and Nick, you can appreciate this. He said, I loved your thing in here about the looming thing on the economics as well as the environmental of nutrient over application. Said I got an old farmer, good customer. He likes to be my customer. Beats me up on my price. I always have to figure out a way to give him a discount. And then he goes out and applies double of what is actually necessary. What the agronomically recommended professional recommendation is based on all this testing. He goes out and applies double that. Beats me up on $50 per acre so he can go out and spend $250 more than he needs to. I said, never heard a story like that. And the thing is, we all know that guy. Anyway, he's Pat Larson with NewFields Ag, the sponsor of this show, the signature sponsor of this show. We appreciate them being here. If you want to learn more about them, you can go to, what's the website, Pat?
NewFieldsAg.com.
And then also remember my friends over at Redox and Harvest Returns, Nick Musser from Moss Fertilizer, a guy just not too far down the road, about 40 miles down the road from me, and a proud Purdue guy joined us here. So till next time, thanks for being here, Nick and Pat.
Hey, Damian, they can check us out at mossfertilizer.com. We do have a website. We're not that far into the cave.
No, not that far into the cave. And by the way, you can find out, Nick, you might have a question for him. He's been in this game for, 24 years?
Yes.
24 years. Anyway, till next time, thanks for being here. If you enjoyed this show, go and share it with somebody that can learn from it also. And then if you really like this, go check out all my other stuff, my agricultural commentary. Do subscribe to my YouTube channel. That's right, my YouTube channel. Just go on Damian Mason, go on YouTube and type in Damian Mason. It'll be right there. Hit subscribe. It doesn't cost nothing. So next time, thanks for being here. I'm Damian Mason. This is The Business of Agriculture. This episode of The Business of Agriculture was brought to you by my friends at NewFields Ag. American made, American owned, focusing on the success of the American farmer. That's NewFields Ag, offering a complete lineup of high-performing biological products for you, the American farmer. Visit newfieldsag.com for more.